Now, before I start this video, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to all the support and all the comments that I have received in the past few weeks. And it has been such a monumental experience for me, and I literally felt so much emotion when I started reading all your comments about the fact that, you guys moved on, or like you guys are appreciative of the amount of people in this community that just wants to get better and be able to get over our mental struggles using this manga and using the content that I have provided. And I just really appreciate every single one of you, and I love you guys. Now, as many of you may know by now, chapter 369 came earlier than expected, and the title of it is Fading Isle. Now, I think this is a very poetic kind of title, as it is if we take a look at the previous chapter that we just finished reading. And the previous chapter that we just finished reading, it was a very intense chapter in the sense that all of us as the audience really felt Guts's sense of hopelessness, especially in contrast to the fact that Griffith made an appearance in that chapter, and his appearance was one that displayed him as some sort of godly creature that was almost impossible to overcome as an obstacle. Now, throughout the course of the manga, we've constantly seen Guts go through this sort of challenge where he seems to come in contact with something or someone or some creature that seems to be a lot more powerful than he is, and he has always continued to push on through blood and tears and sweat. And this was probably one of the first times that we really see Guts show a more vulnerable and human side to him. And this is reinforced in this chapter where we actually see Guts fall to his knees, which is something that I don't think we've ever really truly seen him do, or at least not after the eclipse and all the events that happened. And I've also liked to quickly draw attention to the symbolism in this particular chapter. Now, if we take a look at the second page of this chapter, we see that Puck is being displayed as almost a giant sort of creature in relation to the rest of the panel. Now, I think this is done in a way that really accentuates the fact that Puck is actually a creature that is supposed to be a very small, I suppose, almost insignificant character that adds just some sort of comedic value to the entirety of the story. But in this particular panel, we see that he is being displayed as the opposite of that. We see that he's being displayed as almost like a central figure in this storyline. Well, I guess in this particular arc. And I think this is an important thing to really draw attention to, because we know that this is his homeland, right? We know that this is where he originates from, and seeing his entire land, his entire home being crumbled from this perfect utopia into one that is completely desolate and getting eliminated and destroyed, it seems to really speak to the fact that even Puck as a character has such an immense connection to the storyline of Berserk that even he cannot escape the fact that struggle and pain and suffering is also a part of his own experiences. And with the next page, this contrast of having a small character being such a giant presence, and in contrast with Guts being a character that has been shrunken down in a sense. It has created this contrast between Puck and Guts. It seems like their roles in Berserk have temporarily been swapped around, whereas Guts has now become a symbol of insignificance, especially after that relentless battle with Griffith. And he states here as well, he states that he couldn't even land a single blow. And we see that throughout the course of this panel, we see him slowly slipping. We see him slowly losing his composure as the character that we've all known and loved, as someone who has always been so headstrong and consistently working and suffering and working through that suffering, until we see him collapse to his knees, holding his sword. Now, I'm gonna make a separate video on this matter, but I really want to draw attention to the symbolism of his sword. Now, the symbolism of his sword is very apparent throughout the entirety of the manga of Berserk, and what it really resembles is his anguish, his suffering, his pain, his awful, painful experiences, his own personal pain, all his trauma exists in this sword, in a sense. The sword is a metaphor for all of those things, and he has to carry it around as a heavy reminder of all those. And if you notice throughout the course of the story, we see that his sword is constantly developing and getting bigger and bigger as he goes through more and more shit, as he goes through more and more muck of his life, of not realizing his dreams and not realizing his goals, and constantly pursuing something that he doesn't seem to ever attain. And this panel is especially important because for the first time in Guts' entire life, he seems to have completely succumbed to these feelings. He seems to have finally succumbed to these feelings, these vulnerabilities that he has, and he seems to have become weakened by them. And as you can see in this particular panel as well, he seems to, for the first time, be below the sword. He seems to have collapsed to the point where he is giving in to the sword's might, giving in to the sword's heaviness and its size. We have never seen Guts in such a small sort of form in comparison to his sword. And this notion of just losing and disappearing from what we thought was a heavenly utopian land and experience, this is further reinforced by the fact that all these characters that we've met, all these characters that we've met and loved in this particular arc is now slowly disappearing and leaving almost no evidence to the fact that they even existed. This whole island has become nothing. This whole island is slowly disappearing. All those lovely, magical, pure creatures, they can no longer exist because of the tainting of Griffith's presence. And I think this is actually such a poetic way, but a very dark way to end this particular arc, because it really speaks to that entire relationship of Guts and Casca, and also Guts' journey. Guts' journey has always been to finally be able to save Casca and be able to return her memories so that they may, I suppose, have some sort of peace and some sort of happiness. But this entire arc has shown that yes, there is happiness, but happiness only really exists to be taken away. And Guts couldn't even for a split second enjoy that happiness. And now if we take a look at the final panel, this is made extremely abundantly clear by the fact that Guts has sunk even lower. Guts has sunk to the point where he is only half the size of his sword. He has completely and utterly been defeated. And this is also, well, at least in the English translation, it states that the tranquil aftermath of a storm that swept away everything but despair.